Welcome to Performance Driven Living, the podcast where we question everything. We don't tiptoe around tough topics, we walk right into them. Not to provoke, but to get closer to what's real. You might not agree with everything you hear, and that's okay. The show isn't about being right, it's about being real. These conversations are meant to stretch your thinking, challenge assumptions, and spark something deeper. The views shared are those of our guests and may not reflect those of the host or team. And while we dive deep into health, performance, and transformation, this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor before making changes to your health or lifestyle. Take what lands, leave what doesn't. But whatever you do, don't stop questioning.
We are here with Performance Driven Living again. I'm your host, Mark Young, and I am joined here by my new friend, Seth Casden. And actually, I met Seth at a conference recently and was fascinated by his work. And we bonded over some shared trauma.
Yeah, good to see you, Mark. Yeah.
Which is shared trauma over a totally different situation, which is kind of funny. But Seth, I want to give you a proper introduction. And I say my team does such a great job of writing these that I would be doing you a disservice by actually introducing you myself. So what they have here is Seth Casden is the co-founder and CEO of Hologenix, the company behind Celliant, a revolutionary infrared technology that's been clinically tested to enhance cellular oxygenation, improve circulation, and promote better sleep and performance. Does that make sense? Is that accurate?
That's great, Mark.
Okay,
Yep,
they nailed it.
Point.
All
Yes.
right, they nailed it. I'm glad to hear that. Because normally I'll tell you, like, some of their intros, I'm like, wow, like, that was really impressive. Like, introduce me if you get a chance, because that was really good. Like, sometimes I'll get introduced for even a speaking engagement. I'm like, wow, who's this guy? I want to meet him.
Right.
Now, Seth, like, I don't want to dive into a commercial for your product immediately, because I want to make sure that people actually understand what we're talking about here. And there's been this topic that I think you're able to really dig into. That this whole world of light therapy has been something that I don't think the world has been ready for a long time. And a full disclosure, my first entry point, if you will, into biohacking was about 12, 13 years ago. And I worked with a product that actually was red light therapy that dealt with joint detoxification. And at the time, like, it was witchcraft. Like, people didn't even have a clue what we were talking about. Like, you're using red lights, and all of a sudden, and it was red light and low level laser. But it actually, you'd wear it on your knee, and then you would end up with pain relief because of the joint detoxification that was taking place. And it was witchcraft. Like, people just had no idea what we were talking about. This is snake oil. How dare you? And we actually worked with a celebrity endorsement at the time. You know who Chuck Woolery is?
Yes.
Chuck was actually the spokesperson for that product, and he would get, like, hate mail. How dare you take money from senior citizens who are in pain with this type of stuff? And it's like, whoa, like, this is clinically proven, so on and so forth. But it was this use of light to actually reduce pain, and ultimately through joint detoxification, right? And joint detox is always going to give you that type of relief, because toxification in joints is painful.
Yep.
Now, your product is something a little bit different, but still working with light. And that is you run a company called Celliant, Celliant. And Celliant is using our, tell me if I'm doing this wrong. It's actually using our own body heat that we're emitting on a regular basis. Just sitting here, we're emitting heat, kind of like you would find in, like, a night vision goggles, right? You'd see that. But you're able to take that and convert it into infrared light.
That's exactly right, Mark. And the underpinnings are very similar to the experience you had. And we've been called the same, voodoo science or what have you. And it is clinically validated and clinically proven. And the real underlying trigger for these benefits is circulation, like you said. So increasing circulation, whether it's to the joint for joint detoxification or to your elbow or any part of your body, is going to help improve the performance of that part of your body. And so what we do with Celliant is we harness the body's energy. We're giving off about 100 watts of energy just sitting here talking. So we could power a light bulb 24/7 even while we're asleep in the dark. That heat that's constantly coming off. And Celliant, the minerals that are embedded within products that have our technology, absorb that heat and then convert it to infrared. So we're changing heat energy to light energy, and near, mid, and far infrared have these various health benefits.
Now, when people think of light, I'm going to say this, so full disclosure, I used to own a tanning salon years ago. And I will say maybe that was a biohack. Because one of the things I would tell people was that tanning is a biohack, right? Like, what are we doing? We're actually making our bodies defend themselves because we aesthetically like the result. And that is, we go out in the sun, the body tans, but the body tans to protect itself from the sun. It's like throwing up a barrier so that we don't bake from the inside out. And we're like, oh, look at me, I'm sexy. Like, it's just like the weirdest thing, but it's a biohack, right? And so I would always talk in this, people think, oh no, sunlight's bad. And I'm like, in the biohacking space, we all know that sunlight is not bad. Right. In fact, I would tell you sunblocks are bad. But the reality is that when we would be in the tanning business, one of the things that we would always explain is that there's 3 different types, 4 really, and variations on them, I agree, of visible light. Okay, we've got UVB light is the one that we talk about most often in the tanning business, and that is UVB light is shortwave ultraviolet light, and it actually will not really penetrate deep into the skin, but what it does is it actually triggers the body's natural production of melanin, and melanin is actually a pink secretion, and that pink secretion migrates to the surface of the skin. Ultimately, that UVB light triggers that, but then UVA light, which is long wave ultraviolet light, oxygenates that melanin, and the byproduct of that oxygenation process is it turns brown, right? UVC light, we tell people try to avoid, but you're only going to get UVC light through the sun itself. But those are all visible. I can see those lights. But buried beneath all of this is infrared. And infrared light is invisible. We don't see infrared. And because of that, people don't realize what's going on with it, right? Like if I can't see it, maybe it doesn't exist. But I'm like, well, there's a lot of sounds I can't hear either, like a dog whistle. Like, well, I can't hear a dog whistle, but a dog can. But does that mean that it's actually not making a noise?
That's a great analogy. I haven't used that one before, but just because something, yeah, thank you. Just because something's invisible doesn't mean it's not working, right? And you can look at things that go the other way. A small amount of something can kill you that you don't even see. But you notice, like if you're in a city that has poor air quality and the pollution, you're going to notice that over time. You talk about ultraviolet light. As you have longer wavelengths of light, you get into the visible, and then beyond visible, the near, mid, and far infrared, and that's where you've all seen the movie Predator, right? That's how the monster sees and hunts prey in the camouflage of the forest, and our bodies are emitting infrared constantly. But the benefit of our technology is we're actually not only reflecting back the infrared coming off the body, but we're taking the heat coming off the body and creating new infrared that goes back into the body.
And now what is the benefit of infrared body? Because I was talking about red light, but what is the benefit? But red light's visible. What's the benefit of infrared light? Not just red, but infrared.
So infrared light, again, if you look at the clinical work out there, the papers that have been, and the work that's been done, it triggers the body's production of nitric oxide. It increases microdilation of the capillary bed, and it really helps to stimulate the production of ATP. And so our clinical endpoint is an increase in tissue oxygenation. And that's one of the main benefits of exciting or emitting infrared onto the body, and that increase in circulation is what leads and promotes all these other benefits.
So I literally just finished a podcast a moment ago where I was the guest, and some people know this. I mean, I don't make it any kind of weirdness, but like I also have an investment in a cardiovascular company that actually does this. And people are like, well, what does this do? And I'm like, well, here's what I want to tell you. Like, obviously, if you're working on your cardiovascular system, you're going to notice things like oxide production. You're going to notice things like a blood pressure reduction and so on. And my problem is that the cardiovascular system, where blood goes, that, health is everywhere, right? Like health goes where blood flows, the phrase we use. So the reality is like, you're not just noticing a cardiovascular result, you're noticing uplifting. This is the rising tides that lift all ships. Like, when you increase blood flow, especially as you're saying at a micro level, you're noticing things you've never noticed before.
Absolutely.
Like all of your system starts functioning better, and that could be all over the place. I've got a bizarre question for you. and I'm sure you've thought of this already, but you're talking about a release of nitric oxide. The company that I work with is called Zona Health, okay? Phenomenal exercise equipment. We'll talk offline because I think there's actually something we could work on with that, because you're producing nitric oxide as well. You're increasing blood flow, like benefit, all good. But you're making clothing. Making underwear makes to be the obvious solution.
Yep.
That seems obvious, because nitric oxide reduction for men quite often leads to erectile dysfunction, which is a circulation problem.
Absolutely.
And usually what I will say is that men who are having erectile dysfunction issues, that is not the problem. That's a symptom that's telling you have a cardiovascular problem.
Yep.
And if you don't fix the cardiovascular problem, it doesn't matter what you're doing down there. Nothing's functioning the way it should. That's just what you're noticing first.
Well, you're right on point, and it's not a bizarre question. So we've had programs with Jockey. We have a program with Duluth. They call it Redwood underwear for date night. So they like to have a on-point marketing campaign. And I've got a pair on right now. So full disclosure. They're
don't do full disclosure. This is a
not
family
full
show.
exposure. Full disclosure.
But I mean, literally, that just makes sense to me. But the same thing would be true of sports recovery, because nitric oxide and blood flow actually helps in muscle recovery. Obviously, I would say having it anywhere near your brain.
Well, that's why we launched the Dream Pillow, right? So
Right.
exactly, our first product here at the Biohacking Conference, we decided to start with the pillow. Sleep hygiene is so important, so critical. 8 hours of bad sleep is not, you'd rather have 6 hours of good sleep. So it's not just the time that we're told we need more sleep hours, but it's the quality of sleep. And, I wear Whoop. I like to measure my time and my quality of sleep.
Aura.
Yeah, exactly. And with this pillow, you increase circulation to that part of your body, the neck up, and your brain, the only time it can detox is during sleep. And so having increased circulation while you sleep, you're going to just have more, basically more cleaning of your brain. You're going to wake up with more rest, and it's going to help thermoregulate. So the benefits of increasing circulation: if you're cold, you increase circulation to get warm. And paradoxically, if you're hot, you increase circulation to cool yourself. So increasing circulation and thermoregulation is how our body maintains itself through circulation. And so this pillow is going to help people. If they're too hot, it'll help them cool. If they're too cold, it'll help them warm. And then they're going to have increased circulation. And there's some really cool far out things too in terms of like dream recall. When you increase circulation to the brain, it helps with lucid dreaming. And there's a lot of other things that can be really interesting to look at down the road.
Two things, okay? And the truth is, probably the marketer in me is just like got my head going in 6,000 directions of how you've got verticals all over the place, which you obviously know because you've been doing this for 25 years. But the things that cross my mind, the first one that crosses my mind is the idea that you mentioned about detox. And that is, I don't think people realize, so detoxification, huge issue in my brain. Not my brain specifically, but something that's always on my mind is how are we properly detoxing? And I take tons of supplements every day, and I actually categorize them into four different areas. And one of them is performance, one of them is nutrient depletion, like what am I not eating that I need to? One of them is anti-aging. And the fourth whole category is what am I doing to detox better? Because the best way to not cause a problem is to eliminate before the problem ever festers, right?
Sure.
But one of the ways that happens where so many people, and they don't think they realize it, is poor blood flow leads to built up detox. As we started off talking about red light in a joint, and that is toxins actually get, I'm going to use the word wedged for lack of a better term, but
stuck. It's like a plaque.
It's something that's relatable to people. I mean, imagine the case that you end up with like rust on the inside of a pipe, right? Like things just get stuck and nothing shakes it loose, or it just gets stuck in a corner in a crevice, kind of like an eddy in a river where garbage just ends up, moving around in circles. But the same thing happens through the cardiovascular system, right? Like,
absolutely. I mean, to build on what you're saying, if you have a kink in a hose and you turn up the pressure to clear it out, right? You want
the rust pops off.
Yeah,
right.
And so if you can.
I grew up with my grandparents who actually ran a plumbing store, and that I used to laugh because I didn't understand it. And then my grandmother always taught us that if the water is off, never turn the faucet on full speed when you turn the water back on. And I was always like, why wouldn't you want to do that? And ended up learning that if the water ends up getting turned off in your house, slowly turn the faucet back on, because if you turn it on too fast, you end up pushing out rust and toxins and everything that have built up on the inside of the pipe, which does question the fact, what do you want to do with the rust that's actually on the inside of the pipe anyways? But nevertheless, like this idea of antioxidation, right? Like, how does this increased circulation just increases detox throughout the entire body? Because the body's natural bent is to expel anything that shouldn't be there.
Right. And, you know, talking again about your point about how things have changed or the arc of time, if you asked a cardiologist 20 years ago about infrared is hooey, we're now having people come to us saying, my cardiologist said I need infrared. Like, can you explain this? Will this help me? And so the medical community is really understanding the nitric oxide's a vasodilator. So anything that can help improve blood flow throughout the body is going to have a benefit. And if you take somebody who has a chronic condition and you ask the attending physician, if I increase circulation of your patient, will they get better, stay the same, or get worse? It's almost unequivocally they'll get better.
Because, almost nearly 100% of the time, the answer is going to be get better, right? Like, I mean, maybe if the person has cancer or something, and increasing blood flow isn't necessarily in your best interest, because then you may just spread the cancer. But yeah, I mean, 9 out of 10 times the answer is yes. Which my second question for you, speaking of chronic disease, you talk about microcirculation. And I don't think a lot of people pay attention. Like, we think we've got veins and arteries, but we also have this capillary and even microcapillaries that are moving particularly to the extremities. And anybody with diabetes knows what I'm talking about.
Right. I'm really glad you're bringing that up, because one of the misconceptions in the beginning was we're talking about blood oxygen levels, and we're not. You know, people with circulation problems have excellent blood oxygen levels.
Just not everywhere.
Right. And when you get into the peripheral blood flow, you can measure arterial blood flow in liters per minute and put a device, and it's very easy to measure that. When you're looking at the capillary bed and peripheral blood flow, there really isn't even direct measurements. You're looking at indirect measurements like laser Doppler or transcutaneous partial pressure of oxygen, sort of a mouthful, but that's what we use as the TCPO2 machines to measure the oxygen gas discharge from the body. And so the more oxygen that's being discharged, as an inference, you have better circulation. And when you talk about people with diabetes, there's an amputation every 30 seconds in the United States,
right,
because of poor circulation. And these people, I equate it to a gas tank. You know, we're at full. You can be at 7-8 circulation and you'll lose your toe. It's not that the tank's at half full or a quarter empty, left. It's just it drops below a critical threshold and then the tissue's non-viable. So if you can increase 4, 6, 8% local circulation, tissue oxygenation, you could take someone from being systematic to asymptomatic.
Well, yeah, because just that poor blood flow can turn gangrenous on a person before they even realize what's going on, right? Like, it's done by the time you notice it, it's too late, right? You've already ended up with that cell death. So second question we used to get asked all the time when I worked with the red light company years ago, right? My first intro to biohacking. You may learn I've had a few lessons since then. But the red light therapy that we dealt with, the second most common thing that we would ask is a person would say, okay, I get that it's literally form factor went around a knee. Can I put it over my foot? Like, would this help with neuropathy? And that was one of the most common questions we got asked. Now, didn't have any clinical data to be able to answer the question. Also, the word neuropathy is FDA protected, so I couldn't say yes anyways.
Right.
But anecdotally, going back to those testimonials, we would have people who would take that half moon dome and literally just put it on the floor over their feet and would report that they had feeling in places they didn't have feeling before, much like your person who chopped her fingers off, right? Like,
yeah, we have a published study on foot neuropathy, patients with foot neuropathy, and looking at reduction in pain, which is very hard to measure with the control because people always feel better in the placebo. And to have such a significant improvement on the active was remarkable, and what led to getting the paper published. And it's a local effect, to your point, right? And at this point, our science and our data has allowed us to say we're an FDA-determined medical device and general wellness product to increase circulation for healthy people. And there needs to be more clinical work or more studies published to show how it could help impaired people that have maybe Raynaud's or diabetes, foot neuropathy. But everyone understands that if you can increase circulation, these people are going to feel better on the whole.
Now, I'm going to ask you, we talked about shared trauma, and our shared trauma that we didn't really unpack and say what that was, is that we've both spent years dealing with the FDA.
Yes.
Now, I will always come out and say that I believe that the FDA is always doing what they think is correct. I don't want to get into conversations with anybody about corruption in government bureaus and whatever, unnecessary to the conversation. But the reality is that in my years of dealing with the FDA, it's been regarding Zona. And we're actually now in our second FDA clinical trial and trying to get an FDA approval that actually proves that this lowers blood pressure, even though I have dozens upon dozens of clinical studies that have been done by the likes of Johns Hopkins and Mayo Clinic, saying that isometrics actually leads to increase circulation and decreases blood pressure. But you can't say it unless the FDA says yes.
Right.
Right. And you have to do very different types of studies than what would be done otherwise. And it doesn't matter. And all this, you get it. You had the same struggle.
Yeah. And I also have the same perspective, quite honestly. I think they made our science stronger. I think we're acting from a place of integrity and wanting to make sure that it was safe. We get questions like, how do I plug in the pillow? Just the idea that it's powered by you is such a new, people are used to having to buy batteries or plug something in. And so there was an education process for both sides. And we had the clinical, some of the clinical research, we've published more studies since then, but we didn't have some of the steps in between. And so, the FDA, I think, really going through that rigorous process, sharpened our science, sharpened our ability to explain what's happening in the body and how it works. And we're able to tie the presence of the minerals to a mechanical test showing the increase in emissivity, and then that emissivity increase leads to these clinical results. And so, yes, you wish it could have happened faster or with less, turns along the way. But at the end of the day, we're very glad for the experience.
I love that perspective. Part of I think, so I'm a person, I always say I know a little about a lot. Right. And I can hold my own in most conversations, I think. But the one thing that I'm always willing to do is admit if I'm wrong. And which is funny because I get accused a lot of always wanting to be right.
Isn't that a paradox?
It is a paradox, right? And I'll have people who will say things to me like, well, you're always right. You always think you're right. And my answer is always, no, but if I thought I was wrong, don't you think I would change my opinion?
Sure.
And I'm like, that only logically makes sense. Why would I hold a belief that I believe to be wrong? Like, that's not a belief at all. That's ridiculous. Like I don't live with that type of dissonance in my head. But one of the things that I'm always willing to say, and I love what you just said about made our science stronger, that is, I believe that the FDA actually pushes the good stuff forward and makes it better, and maybe takes some of the more questionable stuff and keeps it off to the side for a few more minutes. And part of that is, and I'll say, I want people to always challenge my beliefs, because I believe that there's, including the FDA, there's only two outcomes. If you challenge my beliefs and make me defend what I believe to be true, I either, A, as in your case here, end up with a stronger defense. Like, you made me get even deeper into my belief, and now I believe it even stronger because you made me prove it to myself as well as everyone else. Or you proved me wrong and then fixed my perspective, because if I'm wrong, then cool, now at least I know what's right. Like, there are no bad outcomes there.
I couldn't agree more, and I feel like you're inside my head at this point, because one of the things I would say to people is, if this doesn't work, the sooner I know, the better I can go on to do something else.
Right.
So I'm open to the possibility that this is all hogwash and doesn't work, but the reality is it does work, and the more validation, the more science, the more it proves that it works. So the more convinced I am that what we're doing is based on real science.
And the more science that you get proved, the harder you work to make sure that the rest of the world sees it. And if it is proven wrong, then you can go open a pizzeria or something.
Exactly.
Like it's ridiculous to think that you wouldn't want your work challenged.
It's more a projection of the other person, that they're not open to seeing that they might be wrong. And so they just figure you must not be, because
I agree with you. Like don't project onto me.
Yeah.
Like I love it. Like my team hears this from me all the time. Like, I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. If I'm the smartest guy in the room, I picked the wrong room.
Right.
Like, it's why I love like the conference that you and I were just at recently. Like, I love that room. And Michael Fishman, who operates that conference, he always uses the phrase about, how many of you in here feel like you have imposter syndrome? And he asked that question at the Lazy. The first time I ever attended that conference, I was sitting there and I was like, what in the world am I doing in this room? Like the minds and careers and quite frankly, bank accounts of the people sitting in this room, like we are not the same.
Right. Yeah.
And it was funny because, and then that same day, he's like, some of you in here might be experiencing imposter syndrome and so on and so forth. And I was like, oh my God, he knows me. He sees how nervous I am.
My hand shot up.
Yeah. Well, it was funny.
I'm happy to say that.
Yeah. So you remember that moment at this year's conference, because when he said, how many of you are experiencing imposter syndrome right now? My hand didn't go up. And then I was like, I started questioning because I'm always willing to be wrong. And I'm like, was that arrogant of me to say that I don't have imposter syndrome here? And it's like, I actually had to decompress that moment. And I was like, why wouldn't you say you had imposter syndrome? Because everybody in this room is smarter than you, and everybody in this room has more money than you, and everybody and I start going through this and I'm like, no, that's exactly why you're in this room.
Yeah.
Like you don't feel imposter syndrome this time.
Yeah.
Because that's why you're here. I want to be in a room full of people that are better than me.
Yep.
That doesn't make me the imposter. That makes me the student.
Exactly.
And no more than a student in a room full of teachers isn't an imposter. You're a student.
I know. Like, I mean, that was hard for me to go through that and to just accept that I'm here to learn and I'm here to soak up what this room has to offer. And, the way Michael leads that conference is how can you help other people and what can you do to serve? And that's such a humbling place. And I think, what can I possibly offer? And then you start to realize all the gifts that we have that maybe, we don't recognize.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible. And it was so fun for me because, like I said, that was a moment for me because I'm like, I felt like an imposter so many times. I've been going to that same conference for years. And it was like, and I've always kind of had that edge. And this year I didn't. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. I didn't feel like an imposter this year. Why didn't I feel like an imposter this year? And it dawned on me afterwards. And what's funny is like later on that night, even going back to my room, I was just like, I didn't feel like an imposter this time. And I'm like, why? Well, because I want to be in rooms that are bigger than me.
Yep.
I want to, every time I walk in a room, I want people there that can feed into me. And it's funny because like afterwards, I literally had the take on that. I was like, wow, that was this moment of either prove me wrong or prove me right. And I was like, it proved me right. It was like, I don't feel like an imposter because the proof was I'm here to learn. I'm here to be fed. I'm here to give anything I can. And also felt like I have some very unique gifts that a lot of people in that room don't have. Like I have something to give even in a room full of people that I deem my superiors.
Right.
Like I even have something that I can offer some of you in there. And I literally spend 3 days doing anything. I'm a marketing guy. You know that. Like that's not a secret. And it's like in that room, like people will constantly walk up and ask me questions. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I'm not signing contracts. Like I'm not there to get anybody to do business with me. I just want to help.
Yeah.
If there's something I can see, I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm actually going to do this. Let me introduce you to so-and-so. Like I just love the networking and just being able to help facilitate those conversations. And because of that, I'm not an imposter. Like y'all are smarter than me in there. Like I don't understand how to take heat energy and turn it into infrared light. Like I wouldn't know where to start with that. I understand where you're going with it,
right?
But I'm fascinated by that science. And to hear that you felt like you walked in as an imposter cracks me up.
Well, it's my first year. Maybe next year I'll be able to keep my hand down in confidence.
So funny. No, but it cracks me up that that's the response there because there are so many. I mean, you're literally in the room with Mark Hyman and Dave Asprey and Kiran Krishnan and like you're like, are we kidding right now? Like this is the room I'm sitting in. Like, and I laugh because I'm like I sat next to Ryan Nidell for a couple of days and I'm like, dude, like literally, like when I grow up, I want to be you, even though I'm 10 years older. And it makes me laugh because like there's so many aspirational people in that room but I look at it now not as a competition. Not that I ever thought of it as a competition, but it's like, it's such a tribe.
It's a group of people trying to lift the resonance of the world and make it a better place and improve the health and quality of our lives.
Because we all have ways that we can make the world better and particularly healthier. You have a company that's doing this though, Celliant.
Yes.
Celliant. And obviously you said you're giving away pillows here at the conference, which is amazing. But even more than that, Celliant is providing this microcirculation support, I'll call it, that you're in where blood flows, health goes, right? Like you're improving circulation through this remodulation of heat energy into infrared light energy in a way that's undetectable to the human eye. No one feels warmer when they're around it. Nobody is seeing anything. So it feels like a snake oil science to people, but you've got anecdotes, you've got clinical trials, you've got FDA approval. Like,
well, we can't say approval, but yeah, FDA determination.
FDA determination, that's a new one.
Yeah.
But the FDA determination is that you actually increase circulation in healthy adults because you haven't specifically proven neuropathy or something along those lines. But the FDA has even said, yes, you increase circulation.
Yeah, and it's funny, not to nitpick on the FDA, but we've been entangled in trying to wordsmith this exactly right. And so the FDA has given us the ability to say what our intended use statement is, right? And then, but there's this caveat that the FDA has not determined efficacy. And so people say, well, we don't understand that. And it's a lot of legal issues, right? The FDA is scientists that are looking at a technology, but then they can't be legally responsible for whether or not it works. But at the end of the day, the FDA, after denying us 4 times, issued our 513G letter that says we're a medical device. We're intended to increase blood flow, local circulation at the site of applications in healthy individuals while it's being used, right? So if I take off the product, it's not going to keep working. And then at the same time, the FDA legal boilerplate is that they have not determined if Celliant has any benefits. And so you're sort of left with the consumer.
You have no benefits, although you increase circulation.
Right.
So
Right.
you can say you increase circulation, but you can't say that you have a benefit.
We can talk about our benefits, but we can't say the FDA determined those benefits.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting.
So we could talk. They gave us a list of approved claims that are appropriate for our type of product. So increase recovery, increase strength, promoting better sleep, increase stamina. Increased strength. They're all claims that follow from increased circulation, because when you increase circulation, you have all of these. It's a structure function claim set. But I think the point you're making is great that we have validated this and it is a real science. And you're talking about even the etymology of our word Celliant. It's cell and reliant, because we're harvesting the energy from our body and putting it back in to create this benefit.
My favorite FDA conversation was when we actually had our 510K intended use statement, and it was intended for adjunctive use in the management of cardiovascular health. And so it's such a vague whatever. And on a call with the FDA, I said, okay, so let me just get this straight. Like, we used a similar phrase, that was, to improve cardiovascular fitness or something along these lines. Can't say that. Okay. Then we just carved it up. And finally I went, look, can I say, so if I go to the site's homepage and in the very top hero image on the website, I say, the FDA says that we are intended for adjunctive use and blah, blah, blah. Can I say that? Well, no. Like, literally that sentence is on your letterhead. Like, I can't quote you. Well, it depends on the context. Like, wait, how about if I just take a picture of this letter that you sent me and I just put it right on the website? Am I okay to do that? Well, you can't do that.
Oh, really? They said...
Why can't I do that? Well, because people may misunderstand it. Like, okay, but isn't that your flaw, not mine?
That's wild. We've been talking about putting our FDA letter on the website. We're quoting our letter word for word, and we have people saying you can't do that.
Literally, and I'm like, okay, and it makes
it's hard because we're trying to take the high road. We go to the FDA. We look them up, and it's one of those things where you have to ask the right questions. So we spent a lot of time knocking our heads around in the dark, trying to figure out what the right questions were to ask. And then once we started figuring that out, and then we get the letter, and then trying to understand how to explain that, because it's sort of like certified organic. If you can't say you're certified organic, how does the consumer know that you went through that process and that you have an organic product? So if the FDA requires that we go through them to make a circulation claim, we have to be able to tell people we went through that process. Otherwise, our competitors would just start making the same claims and not go through the process. So we spent a lot of time with them trying to figure out what, ultimately they
100%.
said that we could say we're a medical device and general wellness product. And I'll share a great analogy I can't take credit for, but somebody was talking at the show about the problems they've had with the FDA and what a medical device is. And you can't give certain claims, but you can share testimonials. So if I had an experience where something was made better, I can share that as a testimonial, but not to sell a product or not to put on packaging. And he said, so if a mom gives their son an umbrella to keep them dry in the rain so they don't get sick, is the umbrella a medical device? And is she giving medical advice to her son? And I thought that was
so
great.
funny. That's so funny.
It's like the perfect.
We're always super cautious when we're working with people who are using testimonials, because we're like, even if the testimonial is a quote,
Right.
if the testimonial is linked to any kind of claim and you use it on your website or anyone else, it's you making the claim,
Right.
not the customer.
Right.
Like, you got to be so careful with that. And ultimately, like I said, I believe the FDA is doing what they think is the right thing, and that is protecting consumers from bad technology or from things that are unsafe. We were fortunate enough that years ago they were like, we're perfectly good with safety. They've never questioned us
Right.
with safety. We just have to go through efficacy studies, even though we've gone through it 1,000 times, and that's fine. Like, it'll just make us better at the end. But I love the stuff that you're doing. I love that you've taken the high road on all of this kind of stuff, because ultimately that really does just prove the efficacy of what you do. Because to your point, had somebody proven you wrong somewhere along the way, you would have given up already.
Yeah.
And I that's funny, because I've never really thought about it in those terms, but I've had that same journey, right? Like, I've been doing this a long time. If anybody ever proved the science wrong, I'd have left.
Yeah. My eyes are wide open.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'd have left if it
time.
didn't actually work. If I didn't believe it worked, I wouldn't be in the business. That's a really bad business plan. And I'm like, but the fact that we're still in it, and as you know, I even spoke at that conference about, the stupidity of sticking with it.
Yeah.
And it was like, that's the entire point. Like, but we're sticking with it because it works. And I love the fact that you've stuck with it this long, even though you did business to business stuff and licensed the technology to different brands. Like, now you're diving in and doing it yourself and going direct to consumer on the way that you're selling. And I think that's amazing. Welcome to the club. Like,
Thank you, Mark.
That's a tough journey. I'm going to be honest. Direct to consumer sales is a rough one. And I am super stoked to see you be in the game. Because I love everything that we do here in this space, and the world needs it. What we're going to do is, you're going to notice in the show notes, there's going to be links to the Celliant website, and anything that we can get a hold of you. We'll get your Instagram handles and Celliant's Instagram handles, and get all those here put in the show notes as well. Contact information, bios, and everything else, so that you understand more about Seth and what he's doing. Look him up. I mean, this guy, years and decades that you've been working on this exact same science. So you've got persistence that I haven't even proven yet. So congratulations on that, because few people are as dumb as I am to keep going. But we hope that you've enjoyed this. I love the conversation about converting body heat into infrared light, because that's just such a cool transition of energy. And it just makes sense. Like, it's something that I don't think anybody thinks about intuitively. And the fact that it's invisible just makes it that much weirder. So I love the woo-woo that you're bringing to the conversation with real science. That's what's incredible about it. So check out Celliant. I encourage you to take a look there. Follow us on YouTube and all other podcasting channels if you're not already. And thank you for being here, Seth.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.